Welcome to In Focus with Ejaz Haider. Our top story tonight is about the collusion in India between right-wing hyper-nationalist media and a right-wing BJP government. In a scandal that would have rocked any other country, a loud and controversial anchor, Arnab Goswami, has been caught manipulating television rating points as well as knowing in advance how Mr. Narendra Modi's government was planning certain actions against Pakistan to win political ratings. That is, in the run-up to the 2019 polls in India. According to leaked WhatsApp chats, Republic TV editor-in-chief Goswami was privy to the Modi government's plan to launch an airstrike on a seminary in Balakot 3 days before a failed strike by the Indian Air Force on 26 February 2019. Goswami also celebrated the Pulwama attack, saying, "This attack, we have won like crazy." The WhatsApp conversations between Goswami and then Broadcast Audience Research Council Chief Executive Partho Dasgupta also revealed Goswami's reach within the government, including his closeness to Indian National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. He seemed to know in advance that the government was planning to revoke Article 370 and illegally annex occupied Jammu and Kashmir, including Ladakh. This flies in the face of Indian government's narrative that it had locked down Kashmir because it feared a so-called terrorist attack. It's interesting that the Indian media has been almost silent despite these major revelations. The reports that have come out focus more on the TRP side of the scandal than on how the BJP government has been lying to the world about its actions against Pakistan. To discuss this further, I'm joined by Dr. Yusef, Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on National Security and Chairman Strategic Policy Planning. Thank you, Moeed, for your time. Let's begin with the obvious, frankly, the scandal that has hit India, and it involves one of its most controversial anchors, also reveals, as I said in my opening, collusion between some media channels and India's Prime Minister's office and the National Security Advisor. Just give me your initial thoughts on it.
Just my bottom line to all of this is frankly that we need to stop getting surprised about all of this. I mean, every time something like this comes up, the media talks about this as if, oh my God, this is a revelation. What is the revelation here? I mean, we've been, as a state of Pakistan, as a government, we've been telling everyone again and again, you've got a mafia that's dealing with Pakistan from across the border. They are perpetrating terrorism every day. They are undermining Pakistan. They've got their goons out there doing things, and with all due respect, one of them may just have been caught in terms of these revelations. This is how the Indian state, the current Indian state, is operating. So I'm not surprised. This is entirely within the realm of what we know already. Yes, everything can't be put out in public, and thus the media may not be aware of everything. But let me tell you, from 5th of August 2019, constantly India's been behaving as a rogue actor. And this collusion, whether it's between the PMO, NSA, media, whatever, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. No, I know, I mean, the government knows quite a lot, but frankly, I would suggest that the government should be putting out more. But anyway, going back to the questions. Now, this WhatsApp messages between Arnab Goswami and this Partho Dasgupta, they clearly reveal strategies used by Narendra Modi's government to use military action against Pakistan for domestic political gains. Should Pakistan be concerned, given US-India closeness? And I ask this because generally when something like this happens, the first reaction of the United States and the US allies, and this happened, when the Balakot strike occurred, that, let's ask Pakistan to hold its hand, because let's not get things out of control.
As you know, I've written a book on crisis management in South Asia, and recently in some interactions, in some seminars in which US audience was also present, this thing came up again. There's a Biden administration, it's really worried about crisis management, so you, Pakistan, please don't do anything, help, because if something goes wrong, then US-Pakistan relations will suffer. And my question to them always is, US-Pakistan relations will suffer, or US-India relations will suffer? It's India that's creating crisis after crisis. We are saying observe the LOC ceasefire. They're not observing it. We are saying you are preparing false flags. The world is not paying attention. Today we know what the Balakot strikes were about. All about domestic politics. The guy is, talking about it in his messages. The guy is so sure that it's coming. The guy knows what the benefit is going to be. And you're telling me that if there's a crisis, it's going to be Pakistan that's going to be in the dock? It's India. It's this state that is looking for any and every opportunity to stabilize Pakistan and to win political brownie points at home. That's the reality of this. So again, no surprise. We knew what Pulwama was. It was staged. We knew what Balakot was about, and we knew what happened after that. If I were India, that's what I would focus on. This time it's not going to be one pilot, but we don't want to go there. Yes, it's all for domestic politics, and that's the kind of irresponsible rogue behavior you are seeing from India in a nuclear environment.
Right. Now, on the day of the Pulwama attack, Goswami celebrates it as a crazy win for his channel and the BJP government. Another message from 23rd February shows that he knew that India was planning something big. I quote from that chat, bigger than a normal strike, and also on the same time something major on Kashmir. On Pakistan, the government is confident of striking in a way that people will be elated. Exact words used, unquote. So when he says exact words used, someone within the government used exact these words that he referred to in the chat. So my question is, are we dealing with a state run by an irresponsible warmongering government?
What do we know from this episode? We know of the collusion between media and their intelligence and officials. We know that just for domestic political gains, a region can be brought to the brink of a major war in a nuclear environment. Okay? What else do we know? We know that staged dramas, staged actions, staged false flags are being done, have been done in the past. There's a whole trend. I mean, there's a whole book out there written by an Indian officer, Blood on My Hands, I believe is the title, which talks about staged encounter after staged encounter. Okay, that. What else? We know that this gentleman is not only talking about Balakot in 3 days or whatever, but he's also talking about something big is going to happen on Kashmir. It happens in August. The world is told there's a threat to the yatra and people and tourists are being sent out and 180,000 troops are being brought in because it's a terrorist threat from Pakistan. And months before the guys know something big is about to happen in Kashmir. So how obviously can you lie to the world as a state? That's what we get out of this episode, and we should know. Then he talks about governor is going to rule IIO, JK as it really is forever. So whatever little space to live a life is left for a Kashmiri, you are saying that they're going to be in direct colonial rule from India for the rest of their lives. So this is the reality, and so stop being surprised. We just need to focus on now making sure that the world cannot turn a blind eye to what is happening there. That's the challenge. What India is doing, I think if they weren't doing it, you should be surprised.
Right. Thank you. That was Dr. Moeed Yusaf, Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on National Security, speaking with us. I'm also joined by Gur Gillani, eminent Kashmiri journalist and author of Kashmir, Rage and Reason. Gur, I'm also amused a little. Of course, there's a sense of consternation also. But I said this in my opening also, that what has been revealed in any other part of the world would have, rocked the state. But there is this cacophony of silence in the Indian media. There are a few articles here and there, but they focus more on the TRP issue per se, and very little on how the BJP has been taking certain actions to, get better ratings, poll ratings, how to win elections, how to manipulate the media, and so on and so forth. So give me your initial thoughts before we proceed further with more specifics.
Mr. Haider, I mean, it was only a matter of time that what happened in this case with Arnab Goswami, it was known to everyone. It was, the biggest kept secret. But now it's all in the open that we now know that this guy who has been behaving as, a newspaper in Nazi Germany, Der Sturm, which was a weekly. So this guy was running propaganda day in and day out. And now, because of the TRP scam, other things have come up. And why this has not been taken up by large sections of Indian media is primarily because of the relationship that the corporate media enjoys with the ruling dispensation. So as you rightly said, that there are articles here and there, and some liberal voices have chosen to speak up. And also, given the initials that this guy has used, for example, AS or ST or NM, and so on and so forth. That is the reason that why other channels are not picking it up, because largely the television media, as far as television medium is concerned, is largely controlled and managed by the present ruling dispensation in India. And also, unfortunately, the other crisis that happened was of Nidhi Razdan, who had actually announced last year that she got a job in Harvard. So when it turned out to be a phishing scam, so that the focus also went on Nidhi, and because of being a woman, there was a lot of trolling on Nidhi, and this issue was kind of right wing got opportunity to troll Nidhi and not talk more about the real scandal, which is now some people are questioning. There are people who are questioning that this is an Official Secrets Act, kind of crime that this guy has committed, and he knew all the state secrets well before anyone else, and the kind of proximity that he enjoyed with the corridors of power, be it the Information and Broadcasting Ministry or the other guys, one late minister also. And this guy was so powerful, or is so powerful, that he would assign portfolios or get whatever things needed to be whatever needed to be done. He was the go-to man. And this is not the first time that this has happened in Indian television industry. If you go back and revisit the Radia tape controversy, when another eminent television personality in India was allegedly involved in those Radia tapes, where a similar thing was happening with a different political party which was then in power. So this is nothing new, but also not surprising that large sections of television media are not picking it up.
Right. Mr. Geelani, stay with me. I am also joined by Mr. Ravi Srivastava, who's a political commentator. Mr. Srivastava, thank you so much. It's interesting. The opposition has held a press conference, and former Union Minister P. Chidambaram, who's a very respected politician, and held the home portfolio also, and also finance. He has actually asked, and I quote from what he said, did a journalist and his friend know about the retaliatory strike on Balakot camp 3 days before the actual strike? If yes, what is the guarantee that their source did not share the information with others as well? And there are many other people who are asking this question, in terms of national security. So give me your initial thoughts, and then we'll move forward with some more specific questions.
In fact, prior to my starting, I was hearing your comments, and I found you had spoken that had it happened anywhere else in the world, probably the whole nation would have shocked that what actually is happening. And there is not much of the murmur in Indian media at the moment because of these tapes which have surfaced 3-4 days before. I have myself done quite a few YouTube videos, and I expressed my dissatisfaction and reservation with the government on taking any action against this gentleman Arnab Goswami. Barring the Times Now channel, none in the Indian media has yet opened up on these shocking tapes. It gives a big surprise that a media person, has an access to none other than the Prime Minister's office. And the name he is mentioning over there, that AS stands for something like Amit Shah, the Home Minister of India, or NM, Mr. Narendra Modi, and he has been sharing all informations which were not in the public domain even after the incident. Light of a celebration for this Balakot, he had mentioned 3 days before. He was in a big league with the Information and Broadcasting Minister, Mr. Prakash Javadekar. See, in India, the 90% of the media is with the government and the right-wingers and that right-wing party, the Bharatiya Janata Party. So they keep on singing the peons day in and day out about what government has done, what are its achievements, and what all is happening. Even creating the narratives. Instead of giving the objective news, they were creating narrative in favor of the government all through. So I am really thinking that the Indian Supreme Court or a High Court to take a suo moto cognizance of this kind of damning chat appearing in the public domain. This is in a part of a charge sheet filed by the Mumbai police in the Bombay High Court. So it's an official document now, and it's in the public domain. And the kind of things which are named over there, and the way he was sharing it to Mr. Partho Das Gupta, the BARC CEO those times, and in between 17 and 2019. So it is really very shocking. And there must be a thorough inquiry into it.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Mr. Srivastava. I chuckled when you talked about the Supreme Court taking suo moto notice, because if you remember, last year in November, when this fellow was arrested for inciting someone's suicide, the Supreme Court moved so quickly and took suo moto notice of it, and he was out. But Mr. Srivastava, what I want to ask you is, because I have had the dubious pleasure of watching some of his programs, which are less programs and more a lot of noise. He insults people, presents himself as the ultimate Indian nationalist. But from his chats, we see that he is actually celebrating the killings of 40 CRPF personnel. So what kind of person are we talking about here?
He is a dubious character, it appears. I must have done more than 100 debates with Honorable Goswami in last 2-3 years. He had been insulting, humiliating, and passing derogatory remarks about all opposition people. He was calling them Maoist, he was calling them anti-national, he was calling them Tukde gang, and all those kind of words which were insulting the panelists on the channel of the opposition parties. And he was driving a kind of a pleasure in doing so, because his only objective was to pursue the government's agenda. And what you have seen on the debates which you are talking about, those debates were like a fish market, because I have attended several debates on several TV channels in India and abroad as well. That the kind of content over there is really so cynical, and the conduction of the debate was so bad in taste that. But he had a particular kind of audience as us. That's the point. And in India also, there are a large number of people who are, the fanatics, who are religious fanatics, who are enjoying these kind of words from him, or this kind of, jokery he was doing on the channel. There is a lot of fan following for this kind of a person in India, and I think this is really speaks volumes about the kind of even TV viewers, that they were just celebrating this kind of a person. And if you've seen, he had made certain kind of very damning remarks about our late finance minister Arun Jaitley, and he was saying that he has one chat shows that he wrote over there, he has screwed the Indian economy.
Yeah,
Now,
that's right.
what they were talking in public domain and what they were talking in personal was totally, at variance. And
Absolutely.
he was making this kind of.
He's certainly a dubious number. Thank you so much. That was Ravi Srivastava speaking with us. Let me go back to Gur Gillani. Mr. Gillani, there's another issue which is of particular concern to Pakistan, and which comes across in some of these chats. For instance, knowing what's going to happen in Kashmir, knowing about the Balakot strike, talking about the fact that this is the kind of thing that's going to actually give the BJP good ratings for their polls. So it seems to us that there is a certain kind of approach in this Modi government with reference to Pakistan. And the Pakistan government has been constantly saying that there is such an approach. Now, this comes through in these messages also. Give me your sense of how or what can be done by us in order to convince the world that what we're saying is actually true, and here's the evidence.
I mean, I don't know what to say about this, but what I do know is the fact that this guy, Mr. Goswami, whatever he has been disseminating by packaging whatever nonsense that he has been selling to people as news, we always knew that what kind of information that he was disseminating was basically the propaganda of this present ruling dispensation. So there are no two opinions about it, that he is one of the very closest they call his critics call him closet Sanghi. I mean, he is very close to the present ruling dispensation, and he obviously, of course, he knew many state secrets, including what was going to happen in Kashmir, or what New Delhi was going to do with Pakistan with that Balakot strike and the like. But the question is, larger issue is whether this kind of journalism is being supported, promoted in India, or whether there is opposition to this kind of this brand of journalism. I think that is the larger question. There is, as Mr. Srivastava also said, that there is an audience for such kind of journalism, because you have to understand the kind of voter mindset, the kind of people who vote for the right-wing fascist organizations. They see the present Prime Minister as Lord Vishnu, as I've been saying, that they see him as reincarnation of Lord Vishnu, who will somehow revive the lost Hindu pride. And they see Kashmir or Pakistan or Muslim through a civilizational point of view, where they see that Mughals have ruled India, or other people from Muslim background have ruled India, and now because they have the political power, it is kind of a perfect time for them to take quote unquote revenge. So that's why you see issues like Ram Mandir, construction of Ram Mandir. Tell me, you know how church and politics, church and state are separated everywhere in mature democracies. But here you go, that president, none other than the President of India, is giving 5 lakh rupees check for construction of Ram Mandir, and the history, how the Babri Masjid was demolished and all that. So it's like you see there was some joke by a stand-up comedian where he said that we can't take people like Arnab Goswami to jail because our jails are already filled with people like journalists, stand-up comedians, artists, intellectuals. So all of those people, Sharjeel Usmani, Umar Khalid, you name it, Gautam Navlakha, all of them are in jail. And these kind of people are getting, they have the field open to do whatever they want. So you have to see that larger context of Muslim, animosity that these guys have. And in that frame comes Kashmir, and in that frame also comes Pakistan. So unless that thing is addressed, and it's not kind of, it's they sort of enjoy when they see a Muslim in pain or someone who has a Muslim name, and that whether it's a state, whether it's an individual, whether it's an institution, whenever they see somebody with a Muslim name under pressure or under some problem, that is what they enjoy. That's what they thrive on, and that's a sad reality. I don't know what to do.
I agree with you. I mean, this is the larger question. Now, just to carry this forward, you yourself, you've been an investigative journalist, you have led bureaus, you've worked for, foreign television channels, you've written for a number of, magazines and newspapers within India and, elsewhere also. Are you sensing a sort of slide in terms of the quality, in terms of the basic values, in terms of the basic fundamentals and principles of journalism, which were taught to us when we started doing this this craft back in the late 80s or early 90s?
See, Mr. Heather, I grew up watching BBC, watching Voice of America or Deutsche Welle, and many people in India also. I mean, to be fair, or many personalities in South Asia who were like, when we grew up, we wanted to be like them, and they were our role models, including some people in India. I mean, who were doing kind of journalism that we are also taught in universities and in the prestigious university schools, and such kind of fascist kind of brand of journalism that Mr. Arnab Goswami and the like and his ilk, broadcast day in and day out.
And he's not the only one.
To be rubbish.
He's not the only one.
That is my point. That is, if you watch, please do watch channels like ZTV, channels like Aaj Tak, channels like Times Now and Republic, and you will see that this is now the mainstream. This is the mainstream media in in India. And if you see, you read stuff here and there on the Wire or the Quint or Scroll. These are now the actual mainstream, which should have been the mainstream, is the fringe. And what should have been the fringe is the mainstream. I think that is the problem. And it feels sad as a journalist, as a broadcast journalist. I feel utterly sad. Whether I would prefer my kid to become a journalist, because the kind of idealism that we had once we became journalists, and I don't think it's anymore there. I mean, it's very difficult to be a journalist of integrity in these times when you have I don't want to use that word. Instead of watchdogs, you have lapdogs. I'm sorry to say, and that's a perfect this is term. The reality in India.
That's a perfect term. One final question, Mr. Gillani. This man, Arnab Goswami, in February talks about something big happening in Kashmir. The deep irony is that while on the one hand people of his ilk have such information about Kashmir, the mainstream Indian media basically either blocks out the real story from Kashmir or puts a complete gloss over it. So just tell our viewers a little bit about how the stories from Kashmir are treated in the mainstream Indian media.
I mean, barring Telegraph, there's a newspaper in Calcutta, Telegraph, and the couple of websites that I mentioned, like The Wire or Scroll or Quint. Barring them and sometimes Indian Express to an extent, rest of the Indian media, be it the Hindi medium, if you ignore, because some people only watch Republic and Times Now and they think this is it. No, there are lots of Hindi channels, and that is the medium through which they disseminate their propaganda to the masses. And they read Hindi newspapers, Hindi magazines, and if you want to understand what is going wrong, what is wrong with the Indian media, please do follow the Hindi channels and Hindi magazines and Hindi newspapers. That is where the propaganda is coming from. If you see, for example, you take the example of Maharashtra, there is this another Hindu nationalist organization like Shiv Sena. They have a newspaper called Samna. and they write editorials in that Samna, which is their mouthpiece. And similarly, they have other newspapers which are actually, registered as newspapers, independent newspapers, but they are the mouthpieces of the ruling dispensation or these kind of organizations which are fascist in nature. So once Kashmir thing happened in, when this August 5 thing happened, and before that also, there have been certain movies also, filmmakers, very ordinary and intellectually bankrupt filmmakers like Ashok Pandit, like Vivek Agnihotri, and they do a lot of propaganda with strong patronage from the RSS, Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. Why I like speaking to you, because you know where it comes from, and not many people in your country also understand what is going on in India. So this organization RSS actually patronizes them, and this recently we had one guy coming from India, Vivek Agnihotri, who came to the Dal Lake and shot some photos there, and then started talking about Wazwan, Kashmir's Wazwan, which is a mutton cuisine, and he started saying that now it's the time to change this and have vegetarian Wazwan. So this is how cultural aggression actually takes place through these movies, documentaries, films, magazines, and there's a lot of propaganda. And I feel sorry for the Indian masses sometimes, because they're not to be blamed, because this is the kind of propaganda that they read. And they treat all the propaganda as news, and they don't know what is the ground reality. And that's where the strength of the RSS lies, the strong cadre and strong media propaganda.
Absolutely. That is the essence of all fascist organizations. Thank you so much. That was Gur Gillani speaking with us. We shall take a short break and return to discuss the government's decision to approve AstraZeneca COVID-19 shot for emergency use in Pakistan. Stay with us. Welcome back to In Focus. The Drug Regulatory Authority of Pakistan has authorized the Oxford University AstraZeneca COVID-19 shot for emergency use in Pakistan. This is what Dr. Faisal Sultan said, and I quote, "DRAP granted emergency use authorization to AstraZeneca's COVID vaccine." This, as I said, was Dr. Sultan, who was Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on Health. AstraZeneca said in November its vaccine could be as much as 90% effective. The shot was approved and has already been deployed in several other countries, including the United Kingdom and India. But as we have indicated previously in this program, there's much distance to travel between the vaccine and its approval and the vaccination itself. We had also determined earlier that Pakistan was slow in procuring the vaccine. The government's view has been that rushing into procurement was not a wise policy decision. To discuss this further, I have with me Dr. Samia Altaf, a physician and public health specialist, currently associated with the Lahore University of Management Sciences, and Savail Hussain, CEO of Syed Engineers, who's written about the cold chain problems associated with the vaccine. Thank you to both my panelists. Let me begin with Dr. Altaf here. Dr. Altaf, give me a sense of how you view this announcement. They've placed the order. It's going to take some time for the vaccine to actually come to Pakistan. Incidentally, Dr. Sultan also said that Pakistan had pre-booked more than 1 million doses of Sinopharm's vaccine from China. And he says that this is awaiting approval from DRAP. And he also said that we as in Pakistan, is in the process of obtaining Western origin and other vaccines, both via bilateral purchase agreements as well as the COVAX facility. So how do you view the situation?
I think that this is a good move, that the government should try and procure the number of vaccines that it needs. What concerns me very much is that there are two things related to this process which worry me. One is that this DRAP approval has opened the possibility of private procurement and provincial procurement, and that is a little bit worrying, because this is a very precious vaccine and which has to be distributed according to a certain protocol. The other thing that worries me very much is that the government's planning for the demand of the vaccine, for acceptance of it, for managing the supply, for distribution, logistics, monitoring of actually giving of the vaccine, and evaluating its first introduction into this population. There seems to be no plan for that. So these are large, complex public health interventions that have many pieces to them. And all of those pieces need to come together and work together to make the machinery to move. If we just take one thing and say, well, this is now done, I just worry, having had the experience of for the past 25 years with the other vaccination programs, that there will be delays and there will be hold-ups in storage and in transportation. That's not clear at all what that plan is. So as far as procurement of the vaccine is concerned, if we are part of the COVAX facility, 20% of the vaccines, 20% of our needs would be met through that. And given the kind of eligibility determination of the population, the government has said that first responders, the doctors or nurses, would be the first ones to get that, which is very nice. That's who the most vulnerable population is. But I don't see any plan of filtering out that population. How are they going to get the vaccines? Are the hospitals going to be responsible, or is the health department going to be responsible? Already UK and USA are running into a lot of rollout problems, which is part of this whole business. There will be a lot of problems. So that is why it worries me that we will be scrambling around at the last minute, and doses will be lost and they will be wasted, and a lot of problems. So that is what concerns me very much.
So you have had a long and distinguished career as a public health specialist. You've been consulting also. Did the government at any point reach out to you to get your view on how this can be worked out?
No, they haven't.
Okay, they haven't. Let me go to Savail Hussain here. Savail, you heard Dr. Altaf. You have been, working, actually taking a deep dive into this over the last many months. So give me your sense of how you view this announcement and what problems associated with this that might crop up in the coming weeks and months.
Look, the first thing is there are three major challenges that we face when it comes to the vaccine. The first is procurement. The second is its distribution. And the third is the public awareness or buy-in campaign, which the government has to do. Now, the starting point is procurement. And there the situation is frightfully dire. We have not yet placed a single order, a confirmed order with anyone. Even the Sinopharm 1.2 million doses, that contract has not been signed. There is absolutely still no commitment.
No, but Dr. Sultan has been reported as saying that these are pre-booked.
No, these have not been pre-booked so far. There is no pre-booking. Number one. Number two, as far as the AstraZeneca vaccine's approval is concerned, that's a very good step. However, since the government of Pakistan has not placed any orders, and vaccines are in short supply, even the private sector is going to struggle to bring anything even in the short to medium term. So I do believe that a small shipment of something like 20,000 doses might be in the pipeline through the private sector, but we are nowhere close to procuring at scale. We need to inoculate anywhere between 70 to 100 million people to move towards herd immunity. And for that, with a double dose vaccine, we need at least between 140 to 200 million doses. And we are nowhere near procuring them. Our only hope is that the COVAX facility, which is the global alliance for providing vaccines to less developed countries, has pledged to cover 20% of our most vulnerable population. That's about 45 million doses. But they have, the COVID supplies are likely to start, anywhere from March onwards and pick up steam towards the end of the year. So Pakistan still faces a very long journey or a very long distance to getting any kind of supplies at the moment. That situation is indeed dire.
Let me ask another question. Let's assume that as you and I speak, Pakistan has placed the order and procured 1 million doses of AstraZeneca. Now, walk me through what happens next and what kind of problems we are likely to have once we, as I said, we are assuming that we've already got 1 million vaccines.
The two challenges which follow procurement are, like I mentioned, distribution and an awareness and a public buy-in campaign. So let's start with the first. AstraZeneca, the vaccine, does not require the kind of complicated cold chain which Pfizer and some of the other vaccines do. So this can be stored at fridge temperature, which makes it like most other vaccines that we have here. So in that sense, the logistical challenge is less. The distribution challenge, however, is there that we have to distribute these vaccines in a way that it covers the whole country and it targets the most vulnerable. So the government has announced that these 1.2 million doses will go towards frontline healthcare workers as well as the most vulnerable. So this distribution has to be ensured that it's equitable, that all the provinces, all the cities, all the towns, all the villages are covered. And for this, you need to have a partnership, a close coordination between the federal government, if it is the federal government indeed which is bringing in these doses, and the provincial governments. And if it's the private sector, they are of course going to sell it to whoever is willing to pay for it. So that is a separate distribution challenge. But there the market will actually kind of come up with its own model. But as far as the government is concerned, it has to work with the provinces. It has to line up the provincial health departments. We need to tap into the network of vaccinators that we have, which we have built over a period of time for polio and so forth. We also need to ensure that it's not just the vaccine. Remember, the vaccine is just a medicine in a vial. We also need syringes. We also need gauzes. So all of those things and basic training is required. These injections, these vaccines are intramuscular. So you don't have to actually find a vein. So in that sense, it's slightly easier to administer, but you still have to train your health staff.
But it's definitely more than the polio vaccine where you have the drops. But I have to wrap up also, so let me go back to Dr. Altaf here. Dr. Altaf, what would you suggest? I mean, given you've also talked about a lot of factors here, Savail has also talked about the various problems. So, and you also said that you don't see a plan. So, what would you suggest to the government? What does the government need to do? I mean, do they need to form a committee of experts? Could this be, NCOC, which is already working on this? Could they be the focal point of this? What can be done?
Yeah, it's true. If we say to the government they need to form a committee of experts, they will say they have a committee of experts. So that is a rhetorical thing. What needs to be done actually at this stage is that we have experience of why our current immunization system has not worked. And we need to learn from that experience, and we need to pull into this decision-making and this implementation strategy people who actually work on the front lines, in the district, in the local governments and in the district governments. Most of our vaccination programs are federal vertical programs, which is that they are managed and funded and managed and looked after by the federal government. And the provincial and the district governments have very little say into what gets done and how it gets done. So that is what we need to bring that, because we don't really have a very reliable vaccination infrastructure in the periphery. We might say all of these things, like I said, that there's a demand, acceptance, managing supply, distribution, logistics, monitoring. All of those things need to be looked at, and that needs to be done in conjunction with people who actually work in the front line, in the districts and in the tehsils where the children are to be vaccinated, the people are to be vaccinated. The other thing is that the demand side, most of the people, if you go out and you talk to them, most of the people don't even agree that this infection is a problem. So there is a huge.
That's what Savail was talking about, the public. Yeah, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Correct. That there is that huge gap, and if there is a huge hesitancy amongst the Pakistani population about vaccinations that have been on the books and have been implemented for the past 30 years, you can imagine for this new disease, what do people think about it? So
Correct.
I think that is a very, very important component that the government is not looking at. And the government's assumption that, they have made these TV announcements and they have said this every time the phone rings, there is this public service announcement, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's not how new information, and especially now new health information, is disseminated amongst the people. There is huge research. There is a bundle of public health research which lays out very clearly how that needs to be done.
Right.
And I think that is what the government needs to.
Right. Thank you so much. That was Dr. Samia Altaf. Thank you also to Savail Hussain for his views. This is all from In Focus tonight. We shall see you tomorrow at the same time. Keep following our latest updates on social media at indus.news. Good night and goodbye.